Hello, Vincent.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
How was your day?
Pretty busy. Friday for me are mostly not relaxing because that's where I organize like all my work for the next week. That's where I discover all the things that I forgot to do this week, basically.
So you do a review on Fridays to make sure that you start on the right foot on Mondays.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good plan, actually.
It is, yeah. Well, that's work for me.
Welcome to Beyond Leadership, adopting a coaching mindset. In this series, our conversations aren't about biography or polished advice. They're about how decisions are made in the real world when the pressure is on. We'll anchor on one situation where the path wasn't obvious and explore what goes on in the mind of a leader when confronted with real trade-offs, imperfect information, and the need to move anyway. This podcast is brought to you by Peer Plaza. Human help, instantly. Before we jump in, I want you to notice something. Vincent, who I'm going to call Vincent, casually mentions his Friday review process, but that's one of those habits that looks small from the outside and turns out to be doing a lot of heavy lifting. People often think productivity is about finding a better app or a better system, when sometimes it's simply creating a regular moment to stop, reflect, and make sure you're not carrying last week's noise into next week.
Vincent Chobart is a software engineering leader who has spent more than a decade at Rover, where he has grown from developer to senior engineering manager. He has worked across large companies and startups in several countries, including France, Canada, England, and Spain, where he lives now. Recently, he returned from parental leave after the birth of his son Noah and stepped into a new senior role at the same time. Right then, he was given responsibility for a project that had to move almost twice as fast as originally planned, and I want to understand how he thought through that moment. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you for having me today, Michael.
Very good to see you. So let's set the scene for our listeners, and why don't you tell them what we're walking into right now?
Right. So you give a really good introduction into this challenge. So I was moving into like a senior management role. To give a bit more context, as I was stepping into this role, that was just after my first paternity leave, and I have a lot like coming up front in the upcoming year. So my first inner assumption was like, okay, let's take it easy at the beginning of this year. Like, make sure that you get into this new step in your life and you get some control around it. And as I came back from this leave, I had a new manager in place, like a new direct report in place that I didn't know about, and I had to onboard. And pretty much the first meeting with my manager, I get into like a project that before my leave planned to do in 17 or 18 months with one team. And when I came in, he said like, hey, we have news about this project. Now we need to do it in 10 months.
If you've ever led a major project, you can probably feel Vincent's stomach drop right there. What's interesting is that the scope didn't change, only the deadline changed. Leaders often discover that the hardest part of a challenge isn't the work itself. It's recalibrating your thinking fast enough to match a completely new reality.
Wow. So you had a new child, Noah, and all of a sudden you're going from a project that was supposed to take between 17, 18, maybe even more months, now to 10 months. It
That's
was
right.
cut almost in half.
Yeah.
What did you first think when you heard that?
It's a great question.
Well, remember, your boss might listen
bit...
to this, so...
I had an open conversation about it and a retrospective about it with him already, so I don't think he's going to be surprised about any of that. But my first thought was like, wow, okay, let's go pretty much again all I planned before getting back to work, which was making sure I take it easy, take the new responsibility, onboard this new manager, continue working on road mapping the two other teams that I already had in charge. And in the same time, it was like new, exciting challenge. It was a great opportunity as well for me, like to demonstrate that I was capable to deliver high complexity project with include being able to think multiple teams under my group as well as outside of my group in delivering this project. And I like the challenge. That's part of how I am. So it probably crossed my mind of pushing back, but I was definitively opting for this challenge just because I see it as a great opportunity for me.
I hear this a lot from ambitious leaders. They see a difficult assignment and immediately start thinking about what they can learn from it, what it might open up, and how it could help them grow. That's a strength, but it can also make it surprisingly easy to underestimate the personal cost of taking on one more challenge at exactly the wrong moment in life.
And originally this was supposed to be done by one team. When did you realize that one team wasn't going to be able to pull this off?
Well, from day one, basically the scope of the project was still the same, just the deadline changed. So first, when they came with this deadline, they was asking, what do we need to put in place to get into this deadline? Is it even feasible? So first step was really planning phase, which was, okay, what are the set of components that we need to build to do this project? How are the dependency in between those components? How we can cut this dependency in between multiple teams? How many teams we need to put in, to make it optimal and not having too much management synchronization between these teams that will remove the optimization of having more people, the speed of having more people. So my recommendation, what I share with my boss and with the VP of engineer was 2 teams plus a couple of experts in a given area will make it feasible in 10 months.
One thing that's easy to miss here is that Vincent didn't respond to pressure with optimism. He responded with a plan. Instead of saying, we'll figure it out, he worked backward from the deadline and identified the specific resources and expertise required to make the goal realistic. For me, that says mature leader.
So you went with 2 teams. What would have made it difficult to have added a third team?
The dependency between the components. Basically, you need to build in a given order a set of components, and adding another team, adding more heads into the project would not have helped to speed it up. It will just add complexity on thinking in between those teams because of the dependency on the component.
This is one of those counterintuitive leadership lessons. When a project falls behind, our instinct is often to throw more people at it. But beyond a certain point, every additional person creates more coordination, more communication, and more opportunities for confusion. Sometimes adding resources actually slows the whole thing down.
When I think of Rover, and I think probably a number of our listeners, when they think of Rover, they think of dog care, they think of dog walkers and pet supplies. And so where is all this complexity coming from? Can you help us understand that?
Well, first the base is we have a set of services. So depending on the services that you're using, the booking flow, it's completely different. And just to give you 2 services that look similar but are they're really different into the flow is if you want a pet walk, you need to select specific date, which are non-consecutive, and you want to repeat those booking over time. You might want to change from time to time, what you plan. And so we need to be able to track all those iterations. On the other hand, you have the boarding, which are consecutive date, really a lot simpler type of service to make it happen. And where the complexity lands, it's everything that we add on top of it. which is like we do acquire a lot of companies that we integrate into our platform. So we do have teams that are really dedicated on like making sure that those integration into our platform are seamless for us on the technical point of view, as well as for the user of the platform that we acquire.
I think this is a useful reminder that software companies rarely stay as simple as the product people see on the surface. Every acquisition, every country, every regulation, and every new payment method adds another layer of complexity behind the scenes. The customer sees a button. The engineering team sees hundreds of decisions that have to work together every single time.
And there are different laws, even in the US, if you compare like different states, there are different laws, different requirements for a marketplace to operate. You can have one dog, you can add like an extra dog, which has not the same cost as the first dog. You can have like an add-on, which is like pick up or drop off. You can make a cancellation. You can make a modification that's going to change the price. So we need to be able like to follow up on all of that.
One of the things I've learned from talking with leaders across industries is that complexity tends to arrive one exception at a time. You expand into a new market, add a new customer segment, acquire a company, comply with a new regulation, and before long, you're managing a system that's far more complex than anyone originally imagined.
And we wanted to have a partnership with an external provider. And one of the requirements was to be able to provide a credit-based payment, which was completely different to what we used to do with payment, and add also a lot of complexity on how we're going to bill this client, because a credit is something which is invisible. And depending on the add-on that you use, depending if you want to cancel, depending if you have enough credit, depending on the price of the setup. And that's really the top of the iceberg.
It sounds really complex, actually, when I hear you speak about it, and I totally understand it. Working on a platform myself, there's so many, people don't realize how many variables there are that you need to solve, and one disrupts the other, and one breaks the other. So what did the lack of history with your newly hired manager change about how you approached your decision to work on this project? How did it affect you having a newly hired manager?
Yeah, the leadership role, it's a lot, if not all, about like trust. And this trust is something that you build over time and you continue nourishing over time. And complexity on working in the really high-stake project, which are really big business impact with someone that you don't know. So like by definition, you don't trust. And putting that into the context that those first 6 months was the most critical for the project, because that's where like we tackle all the most complex component to making sure that it was simply feasible. I was on and off because of my paternity leaves and my new role as a parent. I needed to make sure that this person had what it needed to continue operating without me being there.
How did you cope with that?
Well, I take the conscious decision to be seen as the scope keeper, which I knew, but probably did not internalize enough at this time that it will be bad for the relationship that I will start building with this manager. Because by scope keeper, I mean that I took decision against what he said because I wanted to limit as minimum the risk. So anything that the product I will ask, or the designer will ask, I had like a binary decision. Is that a requirement, or is like something nice to have? And even if like he like pre-accept as a change, saying like it's small enough, I was pushing back and like saying, well, we're going to document that and putting on the version after the launch. I want first to make sure that we can launch it. Even if it was a conscious decision, it's, well, that the lack of trust might and probably did let scar. Even if after those critical 6 months, I put all my effort on rebuilding this trust. Yeah, it was a complex decision. I would probably do it slightly differently if I had to.
In what way?
I would not just do it, but express clearly and communicate clearly to him and the rest of the stakeholders that I will take this role for this exceptional case because of the risk of this project, the role of being the scope keeper. And I think by saying it, that will limit the damage instead of just doing it and say like, yeah, I'm doing it and I will change that after. Make it clear to everyone that I'm taking this role and this is not the normal me, but it's like the me in this context would have probably make it smoother.
So being more explicit about the control that you would take over the project itself so that people understood better why you were in effect controlling the project.
I think every leader eventually encounters a moment like this. You realize that being liked and being responsible for the outcome are not always the same thing. Vincent made a deliberate choice to protect the deadline, knowing it might cost him some goodwill in the short term.
Did you feel like you were micromanaging? I did. I mean, definitely when he took decision and I revoked those decisions, that was micromanaging, like literally.
Looking back on that, how much of that was due to stress and much of it, I'm sure, due to lack of sleep? You just had a child.
Yeah. I'm going to turn this question into something that is not putting me in the role that I'm finding excuses. I mean, this is definitely a context, like of sleep and everything. But even with that, I think a missed opportunity from me was to ask for help. That's simple. Now I'm a senior manager. I should be super independent in this challenge instead of spreading this emotional and stressed decision to my peers and my manager. Now I see it. Now that I have a bit more experience, like what makes you a great leader, and especially a senior leader, is like do not hesitate to get as many support as you need. Like a team of leaders here in Barcelona that can help you and support you. That wasn't the case before, so not that the culture was wrong, it's just that the resources was not there.
Looking back, what do you believe this revealed about how you think about speed versus coordination?
They go together.
Well, hopefully.
Coordination will help you limit the risk. And on this specific project, like that was a key, like the coordination. So from the beginning, when like start planning the project, like I start planning specific date for checking on go or no go. We had like regular cross-functional meeting. We put in place a RACI to making sure that we have one person for each section making the final decision and avoiding looking for this person if it was unclear. So this coordination was great from the beginning. The speed was defined by this coordination, I would say, because like those soft deadlines that we put on the roadmap was what was helping you and the quad keeper on like we have the right speed to deliver in those 10 months.
I think one can think of speed as efficiency and coordination as effectiveness, because you can have all the speed in the world, but if you're not effective, then it's all for naught. Do you feel like effectiveness was prioritized so that you could gain the speed?
I prioritize the effectiveness by pushing back on anything that was not a requirement for the delivering of this like first iteration of the project.
So you push back on any new ideas that people wanted to add to this project in your job as scope creep manager, so to speak. And did you get a lot of pushback on that?
Oh, yeah, of course. Without a good framework on how to propose change of scope, which we don't have, there is a lot of things that's still little, and that even for the team So the engineers that they feel that it's going to be like really small cost of implementing and have a great impact on the overall project in terms of conversion. But by experience, I know that's like when you added those small things, or even sometimes just one small thing, like it's not that small, and that's like delay everything for more conversion. But if we don't deliver, this more conversion is useless. So yeah, it was a few times me against the world because like the product owner would say, or the user experience designer would say like, yeah, as a team that it's easy, and the team say, yes, it's easy, and I say, yeah, but I don't think it's easy, and secondly it's like just add up to a scope and it's unnecessary, and you don't trust your own team.
There's a leadership lesson hidden in that distinction. People can tolerate a surprising amount of control when they understand why it's happening and how long it's going to last. Often, the problem isn't the decision itself. It's when the reasoning stays locked inside the leader's head.
I can imagine that this is not an uncommon conversation in software teams.
Yeah, no, you're completely right.
Why do you suppose we haven't cracked that nut yet? Where is the communication going wrong? You know, it's like the conversation between sales and marketing.
Even with a good RACI, I think there is a lack of accountability because we ask and we want people to be really collaborative. And that's super important. And that's key in software engineering. It's like key in the culture here at Rover. But this collaboration sometimes dilute the accountability. It's basically the team says so. It's not one person the team, because it's not one person saying it. It's like a bunch of people like going to give their opinion. And it's really hard to find like, is that a real in-depth search that they did to estimate that? Or is like a really superficial poker estimation?
So you're not dealing with a leader of the team. You're actually dealing with various people on the team rather than the team lead.
Yes and no, because my direct speak is like to the team lead, but that's get diluted. Like my team lead is speaking with the team because they're collaborating with them, and he trusts the team to a clear opinion. But that's where it's getting diluted, because like now it's a team. It doesn't matter like at which level you take it. I was personally speaking with the team lead, but this team lead first, I didn't know him yet. This manager, I didn't know him yet. And at the end of the day, it was just speaking with a bunch of people, none of them having any responsibility of what they were saying.
It's interesting. In a symphony orchestra, you have section leaders, and you can think of them as team leads. Mm-hmm. And the conductor would almost never speak to the members of the section, but only to the team lead, because it just takes too long. You have so little time to rehearse a piece of music. So if everybody were to give their opinion, it would be cacophony. And actually, typically, the conductor is speaking with the concertmaster about things, and the concertmaster might speak with the various section leaders about certain things, whether that could be bowings or interpretation. And it would be nice to have that kind of coordination inside a software team. What do you think?
It is true. I think it's like a normal scenario. It is mostly true because you have a manager that speaks with lead project, which is like me speaking to the engineering manager speaking to the project lead, and the project lead speaking with the rest of the team.
One reason I love this analogy is that leadership often looks similar when you're conducting an orchestra, running a software team, or leading a business. At some point, complexity becomes impossible to manage person by person. You have to create trusted layers of communication, or everything slows to a crawl.
I can imagine that you, as a leader, want to be democratic and listen to the opinions and help people feel heard. And at the same time, there's a limit to what you can do. Do you feel that perhaps sometimes you listen too much to your teams?
First things first, I never wanted to be democratic. democracy is like every voice weighed the same. That's not true at all in company organization. That's where this trust is really important, because I will hurt someone that I trust. I'm not going to hurt that much like someone that I distrust. And that's based on our relationship, our experience working together, our way of working as well as like there is some expert in some areas that I'm going to like weigh and value more their opinion than someone really junior. So it's not democratic.
No.
Do I hear too much about the team? I don't think so. I don't think there are like a wrong or bad answer to that. It's really depend of like what's the project about and what we try to do. And like to give you another example, like now in this AI era, we are transforming the way that we're working, and everybody has like a different opinion. And I hear their opinion. I look for some opinion, but I have myself like a given time windows to do that. Mm-hmm. And I need to take a decision at which direction we're going, because I think what's important is like making some progress. And you can make some progress in the wrong direction, but if you don't do anything, you're never going to realize that what you're doing is going to the wrong direction. So no, I always time like those feedback, and I don't think I take too much time hearing their opinion.
So you were able to do this project, a project that might have taken nearly 2 years, and you did that did you finish the project? Is it done?
Yeah, I was going to say that we finished the project. It was 2 months in advance. That gave us the opportunity to do in-depth internal testing. The launch has been really successful. No hiccup at all.
Are you saying that you did this project in 8 months instead of 10 months, and then you had 2 months to test it?
That's right.
So help me understand how you can go from an estimated nearly 2 years to 8 months, and then have the liberty to test it for 2 months. So do you think that it was poorly scoped from the beginning?
Resources was different. First, we had an extra team. And probably most importantly, we had some specific expert in those critical area, which was payment and finance, where we needed to unblock like this currency divisible payment into credit-based payment.
Yeah, that sounds very complex right there. So have you been able to take the learning from how you organize this and apply it to the next projects? Because it sounds like you innovated the way you're working.
Well, I documented, in fact, and that's a presentation that I'm going to do internally in the company. I think the question in this document that I try to answer is like, if tomorrow we had to do the same kind of big project, like in terms of the time that we need to do it, complex and unsure about the feasibility, what went good and what we should do differently. And part of the success is like there is a lot of key heroic people that been putting 100% in, which is a normal case scenario will not be the case. So key specialists.
I'm sorry, it is the normal case, or it's not the normal case where you...
No, it's not the normal case. Those specialists are like many things to take care about in their normal day-to-days. Like they're working on multiple projects, they're unblocking like multiple things. That's what we call staff or senior staff engineer at the company. In this case, it was like 100% dedicated on like solving those specific blockers.
I know that this was pretty dramatic for you during that time. Was there a moment when you thought, maybe I can't do this?
Not really. The project was as planned on the cost of how people was perceiving me. But on the VP and leadership level, people was really happy because everything was on track. And
at the end of the day, they didn't notice that you were on parental leave. They didn't notice that you were severely lacking sleep. You brought the project to the table before it was due, and everybody was happy. So most of this experience is really happening.
Everybody up was happy.
Everybody else was happy. Or what did you say?
Everybody up. Everybody on the top level of the hierarchy was happy. People on the other side, people that I managed directly, was really unhappy about me because of my level of involvement, my level of micromanagement, my level of being way too directive for what they would like, as well as my peers in other department, because I was pushing back on their idea, PM's idea about like how to make better conversion. I was pushing back on UX, making that's going to be a better UX user experience. So my level down, like people was really unhappy about me.
So you were, as we say in America, a tough ass. You were very tough on the team, and have they forgiven you for that?
Well, as I mentioned, like had 6 months like to make this on the rail and making sure that he will stay on rail and deliver on time. At the 6-month mark, I shift gears and explain why I was being that tough with them and that micromanaging. And I build new tools also, like to making sure that I rebuild this trust. So full survey, clear career direction, focus on them, making sure that they have all what they need, like to continue this project with my support, without my intake. So yeah, that worked with my direct report. The damage with my peers on other department, it still needs some repair.
Ever wish you could just talk to someone who's been where you are? Not a chatbot, not ChatGPT or Gemini. A real human who gets it. That's Peer Plaza. Human help. Instantly. Whether you need a career coach, a leadership mentor, or someone to help you navigate a tough transition, Peer Plaza connects you with vetted professionals ready to help right now. Browse profiles, watch intro videos, and book a session. Just like that. Visit peerplaza.com. Because the best advice still comes from real people.
Is it more about the way you said no rather than saying no?
Yeah, it is a way, is how I communicated definitively. And as I mentioned earlier, it's always because I have not been vulnerable to them on explaining why I was doing that. I was just doing it.
No explanation, just saying no.
Yeah. No, document that, we're doing that later. Of course, like explaining that we cannot put at risk the deadline, but I could have explained like, okay, I'm going to put myself on this role, so don't be surprised that you might think that I'm a big blocker to not say other word. So to come back to your original question, what I'm doing now with them to do is like I put myself on their shoes. I see that they're mostly because like the most of the damage was done with the designer. The main problem is that as we do have technical vision, we do as engineers execute this vision. They have UX and UI vision, but we still are us engineers that implement this vision. They are not. And so when we, as engineering, or me personally, block them into improving this, it's basically telling them like, yeah, well, you know, all your beautiful vision and all beautiful work that you did, well, we may be going to do that later if we have time, which creates a lot of frustration about like what they're doing. So what I'm doing now, we get back into like all the projects that we did in the last year, see where the gap into what they wanted to do and what we did, document that, build a roadmap, and assign like 10 or 20% of the engineering time on working on this specific roadmap. The advantage of that as well is like the tendency that we have in the past was to, in each project which come from product, is like to try to add multiple axes to it. And by axes, I mean like design coming and they want to implement their vision in this product as a business vision for this implementation. And we do have a technical vision that we want also to implement. And depending on the complexity of those three axes, that's make any project at risk. So by having a specific roadmap for the technical vision, having a specific roadmap for the product vision, and having a specific roadmap with the design vision, like we separate the complexity in like 3 different lines instead of merging everything together and make like the overall project way more complicated. Doesn't mean that in any product vision there are no need of like any design vision, but we can limit the complexity of this specific axis if the goal of the project is like a business outcome.
I'm curious still about the part where you're telling people no, and as you said earlier, it was simply no without too much explanation. What went on in your head? You must have known that that was creating tension with them. But at the same time, was it the urgency? Was it the frustration? What was it that prevented you from saying, hey, let's talk about this and let me help you understand why this is a no?
Yeah, it was mostly time constraint.
So it felt like you didn't have the time to sit down with them. And at the same time, perhaps, I'm just going to give you another version of this that we can think about. Had you spent the 15 minutes, 20 minutes sitting down with them, that might have alleviated some tension between the two of you, had a better relationship, and then been able to work better on the project as you continued. What do you think about that today?
I mean, we of course sit like 10, 15 minutes to discuss some of those idea of improvement that they wanted to put in place. But those conversation was really unstructured. So they were really unproductive and mostly based on emotional reaction.
Each part defending their ideas?
Yeah. Me defending the scope, them defending that it's better for the user experience, and the team saying like it's not enough, why we haven't discussed that.
So how do you have a structured conversation like that moving forward?
Yeah. Again, moving forward, and by having now like a framework about like complexity of those 3 different axes in a given project, we can categorize any of those projects and decide if we want to improve UX or if we want to document it upfront instead of like in the middle of the development phase, deciding like, hey, we're going to add this new thing. It's small.
Okay, but I'm not going to let you get away with that because what I'm wondering is there is a discussion. These things happen. How do you structure a discussion like that so that you both walk away with some kind of satisfaction instead of he just doesn't understand or she just doesn't understand?
By understanding the other point of view, having more empathy about why we even need a conversation at the first place. Because if we have the need of the conversation, it's because I am an understanding of like the objective of each other. And by explaining my objective doesn't mean that further understanding and they even want to understand it. So I need to be the person like putting me in their shoes and trying to understand their point of view on like, okay, why the big urge about like these specific features and these specific things that you want to add into the table, how we can mitigate the risk of adding it versus the need that you have on your own perspective on adding it. So it's really about like making sure that you have this ability to not be only centered of your own objective, but like see different perspective and different objective that might be in the same project.
It sounds a bit like what Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits: listen first to understand, then to be understood. And what I hear you saying is having empathy for the other side, and that requires that you listen to them and not just listen enough to give back your opinion, but actually listen and be curious to know more and more and more. They feel heard. They feel empathy coming from you. And that probably takes away a mountain of stress and consternation from the conversation. Moving forward, how would you implement that in the next conversations that you have?
Tough question.
Does it require both parts to do that? Or can one person model that for the other?
No, we need both parts to do it, but like the tough part is like how you drive the conversation or influence the conversation that the other one like open to like also getting like different perspective. Because it's not just about like, yeah, sure, I do understand you and you're right on your own perspective, and so we're going that way. It's like we need to, both of us being able like to, well, both of the three of whatever the number of people, like to get all those perspectives and understand them. I lead by example, I would say. And I would say don't explain your perspective, but ask questions that will make them get to your perspective. That will be my strategy. Mm-hmm. But did you think about that? How do you think that will add risk to this project? Do you think it will add risk to this project?
Mm-hmm. And what if they say, no, I don't think it's going to add any risk to this project? What do you do then?
And I will dig into that. Like, it is small enough, but what if it's not small enough? Did you see the perspectives that building that mean that we need to build in like all the other platform? Oh no, I didn't see this perspective. Maybe we should dig into that before taking any decision.
So what I hear you saying is that having that type of a conversation where you're focused on listening to the other person can make this less transactional and more about solving the problem at hand without all the emotion getting in the way.
Yeah, and again, lead by example, meaning yourself when you ask those questions, like you need to deeply internalize them. Like, no, I don't think it had risk. Maybe it doesn't, and maybe I'm wrong. Like, let's work together. Like, is it really adding risk? And let's see like all the different perspectives that will make us decide if it had risk or not.
And it does require you to be open to the possibility, even though you're quite sure this is going to add too much risk. Mm-hmm. You too have to open up yourself to the idea that, well, he might have a point here, so I need to listen in. And I'm supposing that if you listen in and ask more and more questions, and you both arrive at the same conclusion, then you're both happy campers. Right?
Yeah.
So, and you can share your
wrong, we're both wrong.
Yeah. That's also possible.
I like this idea because it's easy to ask other people to be open-minded. It's much harder to demonstrate it yourself. In leadership, people tend to follow what you model far more than what you tell them to do.
Vincent, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best with your son, Noah, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Okay.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks to my guest and to all of our loyal listeners. Subscribe today so you don't miss upcoming conversations. And if you found this podcast valuable, please leave a review. It helps others discover the show and keeps the dialogue growing. For more information about Scale U and Scale U retreats, go to scaleu.org, where you can find the full library of podcasts, blogs, and additional resources. Thanks for listening. See you next time.